Everybody, another video here for you today. Now this is the video I was going to originally do this morning, and I saw those stories on the Mayan cities and the LiDAR work. So I still wanted to talk about this, and I am having one small glass of wine tonight. This is not going to become a habit, glass of wine and ancient history videos, but I'll do one for the second night in a row. No problemo. We are going down to the small town of Ruthton, Minnesota here. Closest city, big city, probably Sioux Falls, South Dakota here. I saw this story pop up a few days ago. I was going to include it in one of my ancient history news videos. Then I thought I'd do a story on this just by itself. Here is the city of Ruthton, very small little town here. Small town, Minnesota, right there. Here's a story from 4 or 5 days ago. Family property holds artifacts from 10,000 years ago. What happens when your family lake acreage turns out to be a 10,000-year-old archaeological site? Start digging, clear space on the mantle, and call the Science Museum. It says Kristen Bone grew up in a house like most in Ruthton, Minnesota, except for the decor. Artifacts graced every mantle and display shelf. The walls of her father's office, desk, bookcases, and closets. And that's not to mention the 3-pound coffee cans full of bison teeth, shoe boxes full of stone tools, Ziploc bags of ceramic pieces stashed in the basement. What this lady's father did is he heard rumors that there was ancient artifacts or an ancient settlement on a island on a 2,800-acre lake in southwestern Minnesota. So he bought the whole island and then collected artifacts over there for the next, I don't know how many years. Some of these artifacts dated back 10,000 years. Many artifacts coming from many different periods of history. I think that's a pretty fascinating story. Now, according to this article, they don't want to give out the location of this island just for preservation sakes, and I guess I don't blame them. It says the artifacts on the island represent an unbroken chain of human habitation across 10,000 years, says Ed Fleming, curator of archaeology and director of the Department of Anthropology at the Science Museum of Minnesota. Now, I guess the family had no idea what an important set of artifacts that this gentleman had collected. They didn't want any more digging done on this island until these were thoroughly researched and cataloged. But it says last fall, a geophysical survey pinpointed locations on the island that appear most promising to dig up. While the museum seeks funding and approval to start more excavation, archaeologists have begun the daunting task of cataloging the 8,000 artifacts that Bone grew up with and that the family piled into frame boxes and coffee cans and donated to the museum when her father died in 2008. What does this pretty island tell us about life in Minnesota over the past 10,000 years? We dug up the following gems. Here's a projectile point coming from 10,000 years ago. That island in Minnesota producing artifacts from people that were making these projectile points the same time Gobekli Tepe was buried. Here's a horn from a bison found on the island. These were multi-purpose objects. Now here it gets a little bizarre. A fossilized shark tooth found on the island. Were there sharks living on these waters in Minnesota back about 10 to 12,000 years ago? No, that is not the story. The shark came from the Atlantic Ocean, and then somebody brought it here. This was an important item to somebody, and it ended up on this island here in Minnesota. A couple different kinds of pottery were found on this small island. And they don't want to give out the location, but I found it. And I'm not going to give out the location, but if you read the article, I don't know, you can go looking for it yourself. But they found 2 different styles of pottery here, and that can really help date when these artifacts were left here. Here's a beautiful artifact found on the island. This is called Knife River Flint, I guess. Knife River. I've canoed down the Knife River, Minnesota. Are they talking about the same place? I'm assuming so. But that is pretty cool right there. Just summing it up, it says the Science Museum keeps a few of these artifacts. It says hopefully they can find a house or something even better. When you find a house, you find trash, and they love trash. In archaeology, it says you can learn what people were eating, what they were throwing away, and starting getting at their values and worldviews. But I will leave this article below. Seems a gentleman who bought this island had a serious interest in archaeology. A lot of cool artifacts spanning 10,000 years were found here. So we can learn a lot about ancient American history coming from this gentleman's collection. That is a quick ancient history story coming from Minnesota here. This is Ruthton right down here. Minneapolis, maybe 150 miles to the northeast. But that I've just found to be a fascinating story. Hope you thought that was cool, and you all have a very safe day.